I tell you one of our favorite stories about someone dealing with nasty people or criticism. So in Ubon, where I lived for many, many years, during the Vietnam War, there was a huge air base, 20,000 American servicemen. And so there were a lot of nightclubs and places in town, and on their the servicemen would go into town just to get out of the base when they had some time. So most of the American servicemen never learned much Thai language, but there were a few who were interested and became fluent. One such person got onto one of these little tuk-tuks, and they're going into the town of Ubon, and they stop at a traffic light, and it's like two tuk-tuks, and one tuk-tuk driver says to the other one, "Where are you taking the American dog?" Yeah. So you have to understand, if you're not Thai, you have to understand that the word dog is a really bad word in Thai. Like in English, dog's kind of man's best friend, cuddly. Wonderful, everyone has them for a pet, you know. But in Thai, it's just like this horrible word to call somebody. If someone calls somebody a dog, they're probably asking for a fight. So anyway, this serviceman, he realized they're talking about him, calling him a dog, you know, it's this expression of contempt. So he just sits there, and they just assume he doesn't understand. And so they get to his destination, and the tuk-tuk driver says something like 20 baht, you know, 20 years, like, and the salesman says, ไม่ให้หรอกหมาไม่มีเงิน so I translate. So he said, "No, I'm not giving it." He says, "Dogs don't have money." So, you know, he didn't lose his temper. He didn't get angry, and he didn't get aggressive. And because he didn't do that, you know, his mind became creative, and he was humorous, and he dealt with it very, very skillful. So, you know, this is why I say when you get angry, you get stupid, your mind goes into a rut. There's just very few ways of relating to someone when you get angry. Most and all of them not very good. But if you're not angry, then your mind is free to think of a good response or a funny response. Okay, so that's a kind of an appendix to the talk. Yes. Okay, so anyone like to ask some question or other? Yes.
Being all around us, or that each individual has their own comprised spirit, but the two are separate.
No, I'm not aware of a kind of a spiritual kind of ether that can kind of tap into, but I do believe in the capacity and the potential for all human beings, whether they be men or women, Europeans, Asians, Americans, to free themselves from greed, hatred, and delusion. And the more that you do that, then the more the sense of connection arises. I think what separates people is, I say, this obsession with me and mine, or slightly expanded me and my family, or me and my ethnic group, but starting off with me and mine. And if you like consider, for instance, the story of the Buddha. So the Buddha became enlightened through his own efforts, like 6 years of really tough work and strenuous effort. and after he became enlightened through wisdom, so this is the crucial factor, then after some time of resting and just enjoying his enlightenment, then the wish to help others came into his mind, this compassionate impulse. And so he spent the next 45 years wandering around India teaching. And so with that compassionate impulse, he used his wisdom to find ways to articulate the nature of things, the path of practice. So there's this constant kind of interplay between wisdom and compassion. So the idea is the more clearly you see things, the more clearly you see yourself, more clearly you see the world, then the more compassionate you become. And in a sense you can say compassion is the proof of wisdom. You can tell if someone's truly wise by how they live their life and how they treat other people. And you can see, and compassion is also can be measured by wisdom in the sense that just without that compassionate impulse, then the wisdom and the skillful means don't really come to maturity. So in the Buddhist literature, the image is of like an eagle. One wing is wisdom and one wing is compassion, and the two things go together. So although I don't subscribe to an idea of like a universal kind of spiritual ether kind of thing, but I think that my view is that the more you get rid of this or let go of this attachment to self, then the more connection and the more kindness and the more compassion you feel, and the less the sense of separation. Yeah. What would you mean by that? Yeah, it has to be grounded, doesn't it? And I mean, sometimes you see people who can get really high on this sort of philosophies or just talking about universal love, and he said, "Yeah, I feel universal love for everyone except for him." It's like, and it's usually someone you live with. It's the exception. So it's very easy to feel a universal love to people that never get on your nerves, but so yeah, earthy. That's a good word for it. Yeah. You have a question? No. Yeah. Yeah.
As to how to get to know self, and you gave me a great explanation of how we are processes within a greater process. I wonder if you could expand on that concept.
Yes. So just as in Western science, has gone beyond this kind of Newtonian idea of things acting upon other things, sort of Newton's billiard ball kind of idea. We go into this idea of processes and a flow of phenomena. So that's very much more in harmony with the Buddhist idea. And I think I mentioned one of the ways I like to talk about this is to say that everything's a verb, even the nouns are verbs. So like the body is a verb. If we can, so the mind, you say, what's the mind and what's the spirit? So the mind's a verb, it's not a thing, it's a verb also. So, or another more, perhaps easier image is, let's take the example of a river. So the Chao Phraya River, which flows from north of Thailand and into the Gulf of Thailand. So if you say, what is that river exactly? If you had to explain to somebody who doesn't know what a river is, one of my favorite mental exercises, and I recommend this to anybody, is a visitor from Mars. You know, when you have to try to explain things to a visitor from Mars who doesn't know anything about our world, you can't take anything for granted. So let's say you're going to talk about Jalprayar River to the visitor from Mars. They say, well, what's a river? What exactly is it? Okay, what would you say? What's a river? It's a body of water, but which body of water? I mean, is it this body? And you say point to river, is it this body of water? Well, it's difficult to say that because that body of water tomorrow will be in the sea, won't it? So if you say the river is the water, then you say, well, you know, that water is only there for a moment, now it's in the sea and there's more water. So which water is the river? And what about the earth and the fish and the algae and all these other things that contribute to the river? And if there's no rain, then the river dries up. If there's a lot of rain, the river increases in volume. So there's not kind of a single thing called a river or that particular river, but it's a name that we use for a complex flow of phenomena or an ecological phenomena which includes a lot of other things, and like the clouds and the mountains and so on, all contributing to this. So we can say a life is like a river, okay? Or you say, well, you know, what's your relationship between, now let's say you're, now I'm 60, so, you know, what's my relationship to who I was when I was 40, and who I was when I was 20, and who I was as a baby? You know, are you the same person? Well, no. You're a different person. Well, not really different person, not really the same person. But there's a continuity, isn't there? There's a connection, there's a continuous flow of phenomena which connects me of today, me of 20 years ago, me of 40 years ago. But physically, like every cell, I believe every cell in your body is replaced in like 7 years. So this is a Thai body, made in Thailand. Yeah, so, yeah, even still got the same color it had when I was, grew up in England, but it's a Thai body. You know, it's a sticky rice body. Yeah, so this is a way of looking. But so why is it that we don't see this? One is because we have certain, we could say, like windows of opportunity in which we can express our willpower, which give us this idea of autonomy. So, for instance, let's say decide to hold your breath. Can you hold your breath? Yeah, everyone can hold your breath. Okay, as an act of will, make a decision, hold your breath. So you hold your breath. How long can you do it? Only as long as nature allows you. After 20 seconds, 30 seconds, 1 minute, or if you're a pearl diver, a few minutes, then sooner or later you have to start breathing again, no matter if you really don't want to. You have to, because that's all nature gives you. So if nature was completely in control and you didn't have these little windows of opportunity, then this kind of sense of self would be a lot weaker, wouldn't it? But because there are, you made a decision to come here today, for instance. But even when you start looking at decisions, decision is when you really feel you're expressing who you are. You said, but if you look at what happens in most decisions, I think it's not quite like how we think it to be. It's just say, oh, I looked at all the pros and cons. Yeah. You ever, I don't know, I look back on a decision and I looked at all the pros and all the cons, all the pros, all the cons. in the end, it's not always very often that there's this very rational argument. There's just this point where you just get fed up just arguing with yourself. But the decision, again, it arises within you, rather than there's someone who's an owner of a decision. So what I'm really suggesting here is we don't have to go into the sort of the philosophy, all the theories of self and not self so much. I just keep looking at what's going on, and not the truth of not self just appears. And it's not like a big thing. You say, oh yeah, it's quite obvious. Yeah, I just never really thought about it like that before. It's not a really a kind of mystical thing. It's just every day. Yeah, it's like this. So in English, we do have these phrases that are quite wise phrases. We have a phrase like, it dawned on me. I really love that one. Yeah, it dawned on me. Or it occurred to me. Yeah. That's the idea. So anyway, the Buddha's teaching of anatta, as they say, is not like, there's not this thing called anatta, or a state of anatta that you realize. Anatta is saying that you've misperceived, you've misunderstood your experience, you've created something that's not there. So this idea of a permanent, independent entity, the owner of your life, Buddha challenged you, where is it? Can you find it? So one of my generation, when many of us, we began our spiritual reading and our Buddhist reading with the works of Alan Watts, who's local, from Sausalito. Well, he was originally from England, but lived just north of San Francisco for much of his life. And he was I don't think he was a particularly wise person, but he was very good at articulating the wisdom of other people. And he, in the first book I ever read, he had this wonderful example. He said, in England, in English, we say, it is raining. And his question is, what is the it which is raining? Okay. Yeah, what is the it which is... Well, there isn't an it which is raining, but the English language forces us to say that. But there is rain, or there is raining, actually. There's not something or rain. There is raining. It's a verb. But there's not an it which is raining. And our life also, if we look closely, there is a physical body, there are feelings, there are perceptions, there are emotions, there is sense consciousness in this constant stream and flow. But there's not someone standing behind it who's the owner of that. So again, with Thai language, this would mai mi tua ton. That's really misleading. People think, well, there isn't anything at all. But of course there is. There is this. But it's just we're misinterpreting, we're misunderstanding exactly what is going on, and that's how we create so much suffering for ourselves. And the good news is we don't have to do it. We can learn not to do it. Do you understand? Okay. So this is a question about dealing with thinking, thought during meditation. I spoke briefly about the importance of clarifying your motivation at the beginning of a meditation, because that just sets you on the right track. And one of the questions is what conditions, like thinking, arising in your mind during meditation. One of the conditions is a lack of contentment with the meditation object. You get bored. It's not giving you the stimulation that you want. So it's important to develop this sense of contentment, interest and contentment with the meditation object. That will reduce the amount of distraction. It's because of discontent with the meditation object that the mind moves away. So this is why people who have a very busy mind, then, they come with the breath, and it's just like, it's just too much. They're just so attuned to that level of stimulation that there's incredible resistance, which is why daily life we need to be simplifying our life as much as possible, given all our responsibilities. Now we can distinguish two kinds of thinking. So the initial thought is hardly different from like a sound or other sensual input or impact. Let's say there's a bird singing outside, and then there's just bird singing. Okay, so if that's not a disturbance to meditation, that doesn't really matter either way. But then if you think, what kind of bird is that? Oh yeah, it's one of those yellow ones. I saw one of those in my friend's house yesterday when we were having that cup of coffee. That coffee was so delicious. I think after I'll go and have a cup of coffee, but I don't know, shall I get a Starbucks or shall I, it'd be nice to have a bun with it as well. Yeah, maybe. So how just within like a second, your mind's boop, 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 boop. So that's the kind of thinking that you want to let go of in meditation. This is what we call proliferation. Conceptual proliferation. Or in Thai we say ความคิดปรุงแต่ง Excuse me. So if it's just that kind of, just a thought pops in your mind and pops out again, it's no problem. It's not nothing to worry about. But if it's the hindrance is when you take pleasure in a thought, and then you take up some train of thought, and that kind of, you see, often we're too content oriented as well. So you have some kind of little thought going on in your head, and you think, here I go again, thinking of this and thinking of that. But what's more important is that pleasure that you're feeling while you're thinking that. That's the addictive quality. Just that little bit of pleasure you have when you have something that you like to think about. The moment you think about it, it just gives you some pleasure. And that's just a kind of little hit, So this is what we do during the day, just constantly. This is kind of little hit of like a pleasant thought, pleasant memory. And that's what we're trying to be aware of and to let go of in meditation, because it's not a bad thing in itself, but it's a hindrance to developing the meditation. So recognizing that pleasure and letting go of the pleasure consciously. Because otherwise what happens is maybe you let go of that particular thought or that particular memory or fantasy, and you bring your mind back, but your mind is still hankering after that pleasure you felt with the previous previous one, and so some new thing will come into your mind, so you can get that kind of pleasure again. So it's not just the cognitive or the content of the distraction, but the feeling that accompanies it, that you have to be aware of and let go of. So in the development of meditation, when the mind goes beyond the five, what we call the five hindrances, then there's the technical term for this kind of state is called upajara samadhi, or something called neighborhood or proximate samadhi. And this state is one in which the mind is very stable and very clear, but there can still be some mental activity. So Ajahn Chah, he used to compare this to like a chicken in a coop. So the chicken can still move around in the coop, but it can't get out of the coop. Or it's if you're in here and then outside, maybe it's snowing or it's raining or all kinds of things are going, and you're aware, it's out there, but it's not affecting you in here. There's a separation. So that's and that level of samadhi is conducive to developing the vipassana or the insight into the three characteristics. But if you pursue the meditation further, you get to the state of absolute stillness with no mental activity, just a kind of a bright clarity of mind, where you may not even have any sense of the breath, no sense of the body. It's like just a completely self-contained, bright, happy world. After that has run its time, as it were, then the mind emerges from that, and you're again in this state where the mind is calm and clear, but there are physical sensations, there are sounds and things, but the mind is unaffected by them. So this state we call upajaras. There are two occasions. There's before the very still state, which is like the very deep state of meditation, before and after. And the state after, although it's the same state, we can say it's like turbocharged. It's like really powerful. So this is why most meditation masters, forest meditation masters, say, if you can enter into that very still state, that's the best thing, because it really enhances or turbocharges the upajara. But if you can't do that, then the mind just won't go into that very still state. It's okay. You can still develop this insight into the three characteristics, into impermanence in the initial upajara state. Is that clear? Yeah. Excuse me. Yes.
I was wondering, because you spoke about traveling to new places not giving you wisdom, do you still travel or try new foods or go new places just to be a sightseer or anything like that?
What can I say? We just came back from Sequoia National Park, so I don't go specifically to go sightseeing, but if I'm traveling to give a talk, or now I'm on my way to a monastery in Redwood Valley, and so we had a day free, and so we went out to see these big trees. But I wouldn't, I wouldn't go specifically for like a sightseeing holiday. Apart from anything else, as a monk, I don't handle money. So I only go places where people invite me to go, and people are willing to provide transport, and so or it wouldn't be an appropriate use of lay people's donations to go on holidays and go sightseeing. Yes.
So I know that we can have many lifetimes. And so what I'm curious from the Buddhist philosophy is there's not really a concept of an individual soul, but there are definitely aptitudes and skills and tendencies that are reborn with that consciousness, when that consciousness gets reborn into a new body. So I'd like to have a better understanding of, in Buddhism, how you consider the part of the human being that will go on to the next life, should the person have a next life, and then what we need to focus on in this life so we can be as skillful or as fortunate in the next incarnation as possible.
Yeah, okay. So during the talk I talked about like two different kinds of reality and two different kinds of language which reflect those. So if we want to use the conventional language, we can talk about, say, like a consciousness being reborn, as long as we remember that's just like a conventional way of talking about it. But the key concept here is like continuity. And excuse me, one of the traditional analogies, I think a very good one to explain this, is if you imagine two candles and you light a candle. So, like, what is a candle flame? Yeah, like it's not a thing, is it? It's a process. It's a reaction between the oxygen and the wick and so on. And the candle burns down. And let's say you're reaching the end of this first candle and you light a second candle from the flame of the first candle. Now, it's not like that candle that flame has been reborn in the second candle, but there's a continuity between that chemical process in the second candle and the first candle. So the Buddhist teaching is that we accumulate tendencies and habits and skills, as you said, and they condition our life as we can experience it now. So let's say you're working with someone, who's really obnoxious, and you just try very hard to be patient and kind, and then one day maybe you're really stressed out or something, and you shout at them. You just really get it off your chest. Now, I would say that if that person continues to act in a really obnoxious way, the likelihood of you shouting at them again has now been increased because you've done it once. Second time is easier. Third time even easier. And from then it becomes more and more normal. So this is karma, the law of karma, as we can experience it in daily life, that volitional actions create tendencies and habits in the mind which have ripple effects on our whole quality of life and who we are and how it relates to other people. If we've created a lot of unhealthy and unwholesome habits, then those are we can say are stored in the mind, and they are not they don't disappear at the physical death. And so the overall quality of mind and the quality of mental states and habits that have accumulated will condition the rebirth. So there will be a harmony between the mental states and the rebirth. So a very pure-minded person will be reborn in a heaven realm, or perhaps in the human realm. So if you want to be in a human realm, you have to create the causes and conditions to be reborn as a human being. and most essentially is a good moral, ethical standard in your life, which we usually refer to the 5 precepts. But that's probably the most important or fundamental cause of rebirth as a human being. So in Buddhism, I say something like Buddhism's like universal religion, in the sense that many faith-based religions consider like your faith in your book or your religion is the primary conditioning factor to what happens after you die. But Buddhists don't think that. It doesn't really matter what you believe in. It's how you live your life and how you treat the people around you and what kind of person you are. So this is why Buddhists never try to convert anybody from other religions and have respect for, because what you believe is that's up to you. But really, what we're interested in is how you live your life. And so for a Buddhist, if a Christian or a Muslim or an atheist or anyone is honest and kind and generous, and then should take joy in that, and assume that person will go to a very good place after they leave this world. So I think that whatever qualities you feel are uplifting and good and kind and true, they'll give you joy in this lifetime and joy in the next lifetime also.
I have to wrap up now. It's around 9 o'clock. I feel so fortunate being here tonight and learning fromท่านอาจารย์ Jayasaro. Thank you so much for your valuable time and sharing your insight and wisdom and kindness to all of us tonight. I would like to invite everybody to join me to pay a respect and appreciation to ท่านอาจารย์ Jayasaro according to Thai tradition by bowing 3 times.